How's it going, Laser Bruises? Up, Bobby Sixkilla, and welcome back to Head as Code. In the last episode, we've got our first, well, second, I guess, major ending. And this one didn't even end with us being decapitated or dying in any way whatsoever. So, that's a win, if anything. We're going to jump into the next path here, which will be the pink one. And we'll see if that, because the lock ones are going to come unlocked much more readily now. Because we're so close to having each one unlocked. So I imagine after this pink one we'll have one of the locks unlocked to do one of the major endings, and then we'll come back and do the cyan one, and so on and so forth. But for now, I'll jump in and I'll bring you back at the choice, as usual. Oh, okay, so we're just picking who we talk to. That's going to make the difference? Let's talk to Jasmine. We both went to a location a little further away to discuss what we found. At Jasmine's insistence, we also lowered our voices, as if she didn't want A to know what we saw. What do you think's behind that door? I know there's some weird tube in the middle. Looks like it's full of liquid too, but I couldn't see very well from the angle. Maybe they're trying to revive the dinosaurs. You know, rawr and stuff. She huffed indignantly. You look like a dinosaur. And what kind of puzzle was that anyway? There were no tools, notes, or anything at all. The room was just a random weight. I say it was random, but not like that. It's not like it was truly random. It was clearly set up. She sounded almost disappointed that the puzzle was lame, but I knew what she meant. Why even make a room like that accessible if there was nothing to do? Was it just to see the locked door? Companions, please pay attention to the train. We're arriving shortly. He was right. As he called out for us, we both abandoned our topic. I scratched the side of my head in indecision. Oh, here we go. So we went with A last time, did we? So we're going to stay in the lounge. Faced with a choice between heading out with the stranger alone and remaining at the lounge, I chose to stay. Well, can we have a stroll here then? Yeah, if we have to decide our next team soon, we might be better off remaining here. I tried to disguise my lack of trust by a sensible suggestion, but I could sense that he wasn't buying it. This old man generally acted in our best interest. However, a part of me believed that was a lie. Normally I'd have gone with him, but that little voice was too loud for me to ignore. If I went with him, I thought I'd get roped into something I couldn't come back from. I suppose that could work then. Very well, let us take a walk around the lounge. As we came back up the stairs, I paid little attention to everyone else. I'd figured out a way to get him to stop following me. Perhaps it would have been simpler to bring him to the others. If we were surrounded by them, he probably wouldn't ask me to do whatever it was he was planning to. However, doing that would also potentially put Jasmine in peril. If it had anything to do with the station we just explored, I should have counted myself lucky that he went for me and not her. Then again, I didn't really know why I believed what he wanted to ask me was about the stuff we saw at the station. It was a little odd. For some reason I just knew. I also knew that going there would lead to unsavory events. Nothing good could come out of that outcome. I decided it was better to try and pass some time doing useless stuff. If I looked around long enough while acting clueless, maybe he'd get bored and decide to move on. Okay. That clock was frozen. The hands didn't move. It's always happy hour somewhere. Though I guess this isn't really what people call happy hour. I could barely reach the gemstones embedded in the wood. Who put a clock that high on the wall? Maybe it was to dissuade us from messing with it? If one wished to go to the other side of the counter, they had to lift this piece of wood. Alternatively, someone could just crouch and slip through. It wasn't a very effective deterrent against people who wanted to slip in. However, its name eluded me. I was sure this thing had a name. Hey, do you know what this part is called? This is the, He too is at a loss when confronted with the name of this thing. There's the counter lift thingamajig. Yes. So you don't know what it's called, I see. No, I know what it's called. I just can't remember. You didn't know then. Wait, I recall. It's a flip-up counter. Ah, crud. He did know. Close by were a few mugs and drink dispensers. I tried to turn on the tap, but it made a strange noise and nothing else happened. For all the luxury of this place offered at first glance, a lot of things shouldn't work or were outright broken here. I wonder why these seats never had anything to lean back against. I knew this is what a stool was, but why was there no back? Was it because drunks who stayed up late leaned forward onto the counter? They really couldn't be good on their backs. I could have sat there, but I also could have not. And I chose not to. Why can I still click on that? I wasn't gonna sit there. Sitting there was like admitting defeat. No chance in hell. Maybe a little bit of sitting couldn't hurt. I hopped onto the seat. Gah! As I sat on the stool, I realized somehow I'd been had. I didn't know how, and I didn't know to which entity, but it felt like I lost the game. Ha! I win. The surface of the counter was well cleaned. In fact, it was almost shiny. I looked over at A, who noticed my observation of the surface. Looks good, doesn't it? I cleaned it up earlier. I even made sure it had a nice lavender fragrance, with one of the products from under the counter. Leaning forward, he sniffed the countertop a little. I could tell the scent was fairly light in the air, even when I was about half a meter away from it. Yeah, I guess so. There were a lot of bottles laid out in the open. It was almost scary how many kinds there were. I recognized a few well-known brands, and there were others like Bernkastel wine. What did Bernkastel even mean? Anyway, was it a location? All of those are alcoholic, right? Indeed. That's why I didn't mess with them. Most of us can drink them here, of course, but I think we must remain level-headed if we want to make it out of here. He glared over at Ray. Specifically, the ones A had taken in order to mix our cocktails have been under this counter. Perhaps these would be worth investigating. If I did so, however, it would certainly not get to explore more. Had I wasted enough time to get him off my trail? I wasn't sure. Judging by how he kept following me, I thought that perhaps this is a waste of time for me too. Perhaps he wouldn't go away. Thinking about it, this meant continuing on wouldn't be an issue, as it would be inevitable that he'd keep tailing me anyway. The lamps were giving off an eerie light. I didn't mess with them, and looking straight at the bulb was like looking directly at the sun. Not fun, and it hurt my eyes. So, how'd you get to be a barista anyway? And what's the specific word used in this case? Oh, I just fancy myself a nice beverage once in a while. At my age, it's difficult to find the little pleasures of life anymore. I have to take them where I can. And I do enjoy speaking well where I may. Hopefully you'll find this appropriate given my advanced seniority. Guffawed at that claim. I didn't know what to make of him. He was close to a perfect mix between proper and uncouth. Lifting up the countertop piece that allowed us to move it to behind the counter, I went there, followed by A as always. I examined the bottles more closely and then squatted down to look at some bolted metallic cupboards. You won't get open those. I tried. That's how I knew they were refrigerated. If you put your hands against the surface, you feel it. I did as much, and true enough, the surface was cold. Wait, touching metal that was cold was a very bad idea. The skin could get stuck due to the ambient heat, and I pulled away from it. Oh yeah, you need to have it wet, so it froze and stuck there, like a tongue. Or maybe not. I didn't know how it worked. The bolts are too big for us to open. We'd need some serious handy tools for this. Is there anything else you wish to look at then? He diverted the topic. I was fine with this. The twins still hadn't arrived, so I needed to buy a bit more time. I took a glance under the counter next. Ah yes, the other drinks. There are many out there. I actually looked at all of them earlier and none of them seem to be alcoholic down there. Why would you have a bar but have nothing alcoholic? Well, if you want to have alcoholic drinks, there are some on the counter. However, I wouldn't trust them. They've been kept out of a fridge for what looks like months, perhaps. It's possible the fridge is below it just for show and that's all there is. I opened the little cupboards under the counter, the ones that weren't bolted shut. These enclosed boxes were refrigerated too, but no matter which one I opened, they all contained drinks for kids. One could argue stuff like soda wasn't for kids, and I'd be in agreement though. What surprised me was the assortment of drinks. It didn't make any sense. Grape drinks over there, orange drinks over here, and best of all, there was some honeyed stuff or something. I couldn't read the labels. A lot of them were in foreign languages. I could only guess what they were about based on their pictures, if there were any. So, how did Smiley get all this anyway? Was he rich? I figured some of the drinks here were actually much older than I was. That fact was confirmed momentarily when A spoke again. And none of these doors were locked up, surprisingly enough. And what's more interesting, all of these bottles might not be alcoholic, but they're fairly old. I believe they may all be older than I am. Which is strange because normally, you'd be worried over expiration dates, yeah? I was about to reply I'd agree, but when I took a look at him, he seemed even whiter than usual. His skin was pale as if he realized something. Wait, this is... What does this mean? Unfortunately for me, I wouldn't learn what he just thought about. As if the devil himself had chosen this moment to ruin everything, a scream pulled me out of my contemplation. Perhaps what he was looking at was what made him feel such fear. The old man was already observing the situation from above the counter. I rose up too, and the sight came, grim and strange. There was one of the twins on the ground with a knife lodged in her chest. I couldn't tell if it was G or H. Next to the immobile body was Jasmine, on the ground straddled by the other twin. Whichever one it was, she was wailing against the pink-haired girl, screaming and tearing up a storm. Something was weird. I felt strangely detached from the scene, despite someone having died. It was like this didn't make sense. The twins hadn't come back yet. How were they here? I'd have known if they'd come back. I was waiting for it to happen. Come to think of it, where was Ray? He wasn't here. Ray and Marco went there, in fact. The entire room was moving. As I watched everything in slow motion, a splitting headache ran through my head. It was freezing me on the spot. Where was Marco? Where was Ray? Why were the twins here? In the span of a single moment, I realized that they had been here for a while. Somehow my memory of Marco and Ray being here was false. The twins had returned first instead. You killed my sister. Why? Why did you? Why? Why? Why do you keep saying she's an imposter? My sister isn't an imposter. H isn't an we know H is an imposter, but Karen. I finally put together that this twin was G. H was an imposter? What was Jasmine saying? A was on the move too, but whatever he did, I didn't know as I sank back under the counter. Please don't fight here. You have to sort out the situation no matter how dire. Let go of me. She assassinated her. I was holding my head in pain as the others tried to handle the situation. Something in me was wrong. I was still fixated on that strange moment when Ray and Marco were replaced by the twins. Ugh, what the fuck is this? I finally forced myself up. I had to do something. I ran around the counter to do something. Anything. And for that matter, where did Jasmine even get this knife? A small flashback enlightened me. Right, she disappeared when we went into the laboratory, didn't she? Did she grab the knife then? Why? Was it for this? Had she planned to kill H already? As I moved in, I saw the situation. The old man was holding G under her both arms, but he was having issues keeping her off the warpath, and Jasmine was still on the floor trying to stand up. If I did nothing, the hostilities would begin anew. I moved forward and tried to grab my friend to stop her from fighting the twin. Yet as I reached for her, Jasmine dodged my hand and instead elbowed me in the face. Ow! Jasmine! Considering the situation, I didn't care about the nicknames anymore. Jasmine slipped out of my grasp to grab the knife, and in the same movement, G kicked A in the knee, making him lose his footing just long enough for her to sprint out of his hold. Jasmine deflected the girl running at her with a free hand, and the next scene was something even weirder than before. I was even more detached from this one. Sure, this dealt with my issue, but Jasmine stabbed the old man in cold blood. All he let out was a weak noise before collapsing to the ground. Some bloody red typhoon was rapidly rushing out of his body. The imposters. All of them will get it. Every imposter here has got to die. Jasmine had stabbed him in an important place, since he seemed to have gone into shock. Moments later, I thought for sure that he had expired. All the colour remaining in his face was draining away. His breathing had already ceased the moment she stabbed him. Perhaps she'd gotten him in his lung. I wasn't exactly sure what this meant. His entire body was softening up and he dropped down like a marionette without its strings. As I watched, powerless, G's cry was mixed with the noise of the body falling to the ground. Just like the expiration dates for the drinks, his own had come. Jasmine, stop! Why him? What are you... I stopped talking when I saw her pull the knife out of the old man's body. Her gaze was unfocused. It was all over the place. Her eyes were always open and never blinked anymore. I thought I imagined it, but I definitely saw her irises wiggling slightly. They were vibrating back and forth once in a while. What happened to you, Jasmine? My inertia ended the moment she turned her head away from the old man to look elsewhere. Where? Nearby E was standing up. She clearly felt something was amiss. However, she also couldn't tell what exactly was happening. And Jasmine had her sights on her. Despite all that Jasmine was doing, I couldn't bring myself to hate her. I didn't know what was happening to her. It was like a demon possessed her. I just needed to destroy that demon. If I destroyed that demon, Jasmine would come back to me. Her eyes, I could tell, they weren't fine. She wasn't fine, and I needed to free her from that demon. In the split moment of my choice, I saw two things. One, G was utterly useless. She was horrified, and in her state, She was much more focused on her twin's dead body. 2. Jasmine was lunging forward. I only had a single moment to act. I could either slam Jasmine to knock her out cold, or pull E out of her trajectory. I was about midway between both. The small hesitation was because I didn't know if I'd hurt Jasmine doing it. At the same time, I couldn't stand by idly while E was in danger. A choice. We gotta save E. I love E. E's great. In the moment, I remember Jasmine's eyes. They were crazy. They were completely out of focus. I understood then that there was no reasoning with her. But she didn't stab G earlier when she shoved the girl aside. Perhaps then that G would be safe with her? Paradoxically? I didn't know what to do, so I said the most natural thing. I reached over for E. As soon as my hand wrapped around her wrist, I yanked her out of the way. Huh? What? What's going on? She quickly fell against me. I gritted my teeth upon feeling the added weight. A small clicking noise echoed when our collars came into contact. I almost lost my footing, but I remained upright. At that moment, I figured that she wasn't any threat. She was innocent, and I could trust her. My first priority was to help her, to bring her to a safe location. I saw that she understood the fact that I was no threat and she could trust me. Meanwhile, Jasmine was considering the situation, now that I'd added myself to the equation. I had to figure something out to destabilize her further. Quickly, I took the first thing I could reach. It was the bag A gave me. It contained all the pens. Surely they'd come in handy now. I unzipped it and backed off with E. Don't come closer. Perhaps this is ridiculous. Still, I threw the pens one by one. When I came upon the E pen, I decided to leave it in the bag. Same deal for the S pen. I couldn't throw those, just in case, but I was almost out of ammo. Yet that wasn't enough to deter Jasmine. I was almost at the staircase. If I could just throw one more thing at her. Right, the bag itself. I plucked the last 2 pens out, flung those, and then lobbed the bag at her face, which made her hesitate. That was enough. I sprinted out of the room with E in tow. Ugh. I ran for it. We almost tripped down the stairs in our hurry. In that moment, I had a passing thought for the leftover twin. But as I figured out earlier, maybe she'd be fine. Probably not, but maybe. I just had to hope that was the case, just as I was hoping for the train to arrive quickly. If Jasmine got her bearings back and barreled down the stairs, there'd be nothing stopping her from... It was quiet, so I exhaled a breath I didn't know I still had. She wasn't coming down. Perhaps G was... I shook my head. I knew I shouldn't have thought about it. I knew that I might have left the twin to die, but I had no choice. I clenched my teeth when I realized that choice still perhaps condemned one of them. The train arrived. As soon as the doors opened, we boarded it. As soon as we entered, the train departed. We were going toward the north side. I hadn't picked which staircase it went down to because I didn't have the state of mind to think about it. Perhaps I should have thought about it more. Where are we going? What was that event? Unfortunately, I had no means to communicate with her, so I had to think of something else. I tapped onto her hand as if to comfort her. Ah, well. Whatever it wasn't good, huh? But at least we're good now. I don't know if you're writing something, so poke my hand once if yes, twice if no. I poked her hand twice. Oh, did you run out of paper? I poked her hand twice. That was technically true. It was just in the bag. Something else must be preventing you from writing. Did you lose the pen too? I poked her hand once. At least I could answer simple questions. Ah, that's really bad. Well, at least inform me of what happened like this. Is everyone okay? I poked her hand twice. They definitely weren't okay. Did people die? I hesitated. To which point do I really need to tell her the truth? No answer, huh? So I guess they did. I realized too late that my lack of answer spoke for itself. I brushed the back of my head awkwardly as the train came to a stop. Well, she can't see that at least, so that's cool. I looked around the station, but there was no one. The doors were open. This is already solved. We can escape with E. As long as we're always with E, we've always got a way out. Just as eagerly, the train closed its doors and ventured off again. I don't know what else to ask, but you can't ask me anything. We can take the rest of the line in silence then. Is that okay? I answered by poking her hand once, even if I wanted to talk more. It was helping, but it was just like she said. I didn't know how to communicate with her without those pens. Sure, I needed the paper too, and all of them were gone with the bag. The train crossed the second, third, and fourth station without a hitch. I figured we'd leave at the fifth one. Unfortunately, that station had its doors closed. Were Marco and Ray in sight? Since leaving here was definitely one of the worst options, I didn't. Instead, I remained in the train, in silence, with E. I remained like that until we arrived at the next station. I waited a while, but it wouldn't go, so this definitely was a new station. It was perhaps the last one of the line. The announcer called it the theatre station. Oh, here we go again. It's not moving anymore. Are we at the new station then? My priority was to escort E out of here. I poked her hand once and we stood up together. The idea was, if we entered a new station, the doors would close behind us. Since we had no time limit, we could wait there with the solution, refrain from entering it for several hours if needed, and then we could head back out in relative safety. And then, perhaps the issue would be resolved. I doubted it. Yet this is the most cowardly plan I could come up with, and it was marvellous. We stepped into the station. It immediately became apparent this choice was a foolhardy decision on my part because the door was closed. Huh? But Marco and Ray were... Did they split up? Did they split up and one went here? No, wait. The doors only closed when two collars step inside, didn't they? So it shouldn't be closed if just one person came in. Wait. One person? I opened my mouth in silent horror at what I just thought about. Why did we never try this? Perhaps I should have checked. I should have tried entering a station alone to see if it closed up. If it didn't, then maybe no puzzle needed to be solved that way. If we traverse them one by one, then the doors would never lock up. Yeah, but we need two people to get through the security gate. Not that he knows that. Or maybe it was just a trap set up by Smiling. Whatever the case was, I couldn't test it now. The door was closed. There was no one but me and E. The train had gone already. No other came by. I looked at the other side of the station. The door was closed too. And the space between the stations was, as I mentioned long ago, far too dangerous to cross. That was a last-ditch effort, and nothing else. He went silent for a while. Is everything fine? First I had to comfort E. I lied by poking her hand one time. Is taking a break then? Come poke my hand when you're good to go. She smiled. That was a smile that needed protecting. I thought I could do it. It was my task now. First order of business? Check out the door. Or could I check everything else first? Perhaps something or another would be a way out. Oh, you mean up this metal grate? Oh, that always goes badly. The door was closed. I tried peeking through the window. Inside was a bunch of rubble. What was that all about? I tried to find a way to open one of the plates. They were affixed to the wall with large bolts, but surely there was a way to get them off. I tried with all my might, but there was no way they were opening up. If Ray couldn't have done it, I sure as hell didn't stand a chance. No secret passages behind this television screen. It was as flat as my mood. Or as flat as the Earth, if I believed the Earth was flat, which I didn't. Or it was as flat as a bratty anime girl. Perhaps it was even as flat as these comparisons. That sign wouldn't stop me because I couldn't read. Oh no, I could read, but there was no one around who could enforce the sign. Still, the sign itself would be no use to me. If you had to say that sign won't stop me because I can't read, that means you must have read the sign. My steps were blocked after only a few in this encroaching darkness. The reason was simple. It was a bit great. Unless I could cut myself into pieces, I wouldn't make it through here. Like in Resident Evil 1, the movie. I could have done it if I had a knife, but I wouldn't be alive anymore, which would be counterproductive to the goal. Even if someone picked up the little cubes and made me, but to put them back together, it wouldn't be fine on the other side. Are you sure? I tried and tried, but I couldn't open it. There was no handle. There was nothing I could do to get it open. Even the window in the door was useless. As thick as a door, it didn't break even when I threw the strongest punch. I had to accept it. We were trapped here. I decided against informing E for now. Instead, I waited. Maybe some help would come. Eventually they've got to finish in this room, right? That was what I thought. Against the wall, I slid to the ground and sat, waiting. Wait, no. What if in that room is us and E? Like we were before. Just being together forever. In another timeline. That'd be weird, because it's us and E standing outside of it as well. But help did not come. Nothing happened. Felt like an eternity passed us by while we waited for help that never came. I stood up and decided it was time for the last ditch effort. If I could reach the other side of the platform, another train would arrive and take us away. That was why I prepared myself for it. I backed up, looked at E, still serene, waiting for help as well, and I moved forward, confident in my take. I wouldn't get to make that first step into the dangerous abyss between the stations, however. As soon as I made up my mind, darkness greeted me. Did I pass out? Did the lights simply turn off? No. It was stranger than that. It was as though I was floating in darkness. I couldn't feel my body. There was only darkness. What the hell happened? Ending H. Abyss bad end. Oh, that doesn't unlock anything. Well, that's okay. Because we had a couple of choices that we can make there that changes everything, so let's get back in there, shall we? Let's have a look at our flowchart. Groovy. Okay, we're going to jump in here. And I'll bring you back at the choice. Okie dokie. Someone believed it's best to tackle Jasmine. I chose to knock Jasmine away with a powerful slam on my shoulder. She was instantly knocked out when she collided against the wall. Perhaps I'd gone a little too hard. It hurt to do this to my friend, but I had no choice. I was either knocking her out or risking her damaging someone else. Or even herself. Even more than a simple knockout. Something in her caused her to go out of her mind. At last, she dropped the knife on the way down, and she crumpled to the floor in a heap of jasmine. The weapon was covered with a red, drying bloodbath. I panted heavily, calming down after that altercation. It had drawn a lot out of me just to do this much. Meanwhile, G was still watching, unable to move. It was perhaps a better way to say that she was no longer willing to move. She was still frozen in shock, simply put. This whole business is... What even happened? I don't know, but we have to treat her. We need to bring her back. Bring her back? She looked at me, strangely bewildered. I spoke about Jasmine, but perhaps she misinterpreted it. I corrected myself to not give her false hopes. I mean, we have to restrain Jay. So that way she won't hurt us. She killed my sister. That's all I want. I want my sister back. She clenched her teeth. The sadness in her voice was impossible to mistake. I approached her to console her, but she glared at me. Don't come closer. She stood up and hesitated before grabbing her sister's body and carrying it off. I watched it all happen, unable and unwilling to get in the middle of them. I waited a few minutes, though I knew I didn't have all the time in the world. Jasmine was knocked out, but she'd come awake sooner or later. I took a look at her body. No, not like that. Just a cursory one. Making sure she was still alive was a priority. She was not bleeding anywhere, but the hit she got was definitely strong. Looking around for anything to help me, I noticed that when G carried H's body away, she left something behind. The other twin had carried a map on her, and now it was on the floor. I found it strange that G didn't come back for it, but I wasn't going to complain. I took it and looked it over. There were names of every station and a map of all of them, separately in a pile. One of them was an infirmary. Ah, I can use this to keep Jasmine bound and treat her if needed. Didn't A say that he came back from the infirmary earlier? That means it's solved and vacant. I also had to take care of the knife. This kind of thing was too dangerous to leave lying around or give to anyone. I needed to get rid of it in a way that would make it impossible for anyone to get it anymore. First I needed to clean it. I loathed doing this, but I used A's body to do so. I wiped it off with a piece of his clothing. Yeah, I didn't have any other way. This place surprisingly didn't have a sink, and the water cooler was just for show. It was empty. There's toilets. Wash it off in a toilet. I had a passing thought for G while I was cleaning the knife. She was the only one apart from Jasmine and me who knew what transpired here, and she was on the loose. The twin would definitely be different the next time we met. Once she'd processed everything, it would change her. Something like that could break someone. Perhaps she was already broken. It was partially my fault. Okay, first order of business done. Now, let's leave the knife somewhere. No one will find it. I put it in my outfit and lifted Jasmine from the ground to carry her down the stairs. I needed to take the train with her and head to the infirmary. Ugh, she was heavy. Way heavier than I thought she'd be. I wasn't someone who was especially fit, just average, so carrying a body like hers slowed me down considerably. She could have eaten less strawberry cake at least. I knew she loved it, but this is a bit much. Rude. I'm sure she would have killed you if she'd heard you say that. I made sure the twins went downstairs before I stepped out of the little lobby. The train must have passed. I don't know which direction she took. Perhaps she went the same way. That wouldn't be good. I spoke aloud to organize my thoughts. I need to find a place where no one would take the knife anymore. That's it. The rails. No one would cross for it, especially if I threw it into the darkness. No one could see it. That's such a good idea. I lowered Jasmine to the ground slowly, then I went to the little dark hallway, and just before entering it, I looked into the tunnel. I couldn't see a thing beyond this room. Perfect. It was pitch black. I threw the knife, which echoed as it landed through with loud clanks, and then nothing. It's gone now. No one will make use of it again. It was as if I spoke to reassure Jasmine, but she was still out cold. The train arrived momentarily. I painstakingly lifted Jasmine up to enter the train with her. There was no one else around. Everything was eerily deserted. Eerily silent. Just eerie. What a mess. I set Jasmine in a seat. She looked like a disarticulated marionette. I made sure to position her in a way to have the momentum work with her posture. The train set off. I had to count the stations to not miss my stop, but I also wanted to think about the situation. Let's make sense of all this fuckery. I felt like Ray swearing so much. We all came back from our stations, except for the twins. Marco, Ray, Jasmine, A, and E, and myself were there. Wait, fuck. E was there. I completely forgot about her. I slapped my face. Shit! In the moment, I didn't realize I left her there, since she was so quiet. I'd go back for her later, I thought. Whatever, right now let's just focus on this. I'm not seeing Marco or Ray anywhere at the moment. It's so weird. They're not on any of those stations either. What numbers are they? Do they make 9 together? It's like they just vanished. The twins went in the lounge. Marco and Ray were there. Then when I came back upstairs, my memory's kind of fuzzy about it. Were the twins there? I don't know. I ruffled my hair rapidly, making a mess of it. The more I thought about Marco and Ray, the harder my head hurt. It was like reality didn't want me to think about it. Did I mistakenly see them? Was I hallucinating? Were my eyes playing tricks on me? I shook my head to clear it all up. Thankfully, the train stopped at the station I wanted to go to. It had stopped a few times prior, but I didn't pay attention to those. I only mentally counted them. I grabbed Jasmine again and quickly hoisted her up over my shoulder. Ugh, I had to get used to this, especially if I needed to carry her upstairs. I needed to be quick before the train departed again. Finally, I was on the station. It didn't take too long before heading to the lobby. And then right up the stairs. One step at a time, I ascended with great effort, but I managed. Panting on the halfway mark, I remained there for several moments before resuming my trek. Finally, I was at the top. I quickly spied a bed, in which I deposited her with all the care in the world. Oh, this would have been easier with someone else, but... well, that'd be kind of hard right now. Our entire group is somewhat dysfunctional. It was already pretty dysfunctional to start with. What a mess. I repeated the words I'd said before taking the train. For some reason it helped me cope with it. Okay, what now? I got rid of the knife, so I was safe. I wanted answers, but I also wanted her to be alright first, so I could get those answers. I went to the sink. There you go, there are sinks. With some paper towels in hand, I wet the lot and folded it up and put it on her forehead. At least this would alleviate the pain I caused her by knocking her out. Nothing to do then but wait. After a while, I remember what Smiley said and I quickly fixed my predicament. I attached a post-it note from one of the stacks I found in the infirmary to the door frames at the bottom. One of them was the indication to yell if they were to go up, as this place was occupied by 2 already. That's clever. At least this will prevent some kind of shitty tragedy. While I'd been waiting, I investigated the area but found nothing of use. Jasmine was taking a long time to come back to her senses, so I decided to examine her again. I took her temperature, but everything seemed normal. It was when I pulled my hand away that I noticed something weird. First of all, it was important to establish the fact that Jasmine dyed her hair. It was not actually naturally pink. Her eyebrows were a real colour, brown. Normally she puts stars in it too, just to look cute. Or maybe that was just a habit she'd had when she was younger and she no longer had it. Whatever. What I was seeing didn't make sense. I noticed her hair could sort of fall. With a hand, I curiously reached to the scalp and pulled. What was this? I could remove her hair. Underneath was more hair. Did she switch to wearing a wig instead of dyeing it? What was the point of this? This doesn't make sense. Did you try dyeing her hair another colour? What happened after I left you to attend the University of Montreal? Fucking knew I should have stayed. I squeezed my hands into fists, angry at the world. I was also angry at myself. Underneath the pink wig, her hair was blonde. It wasn't brown, it wasn't pink, it was blonde. Strands couldn't lie. Blonde like the twins? What the fuck happened to you, Jasmine? You dyed your hair? Blonde? That question, much like the previous one, was rhetorical. I had no real way of telling what happened to her. And since she was knocked unconscious, she had no way of answering me. Something was definitely wrong with this. I backed off and went downstairs to think about it. I'd removed the whole wig, and the hair underneath was blonde. It wasn't long either. It was kept short. Maybe that sort of fit under the wig better? Why is her hair blonde? Alright, we're out of time for this episode. So we're going to wrap this one up here, but in the next one we'll continue this, and hopefully this one will give us an ending that will unlock one of those locks for a big one next time. Because I'm excited to see one of those endings. And we're running out of the little offshoot paths to go down. There is still more, but not a lot more. But yeah, we'll see what happens. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Thanks for watching. Thanks for hanging out with me, and I'll see you in the next one.